Full screen on. Stop share. Happy morning. Welcome back to the continuation of introductory session on critical reasoning. As I said, critical reasoning is one of the most challenging question types that you would encounter in the aptitude test component. And going by a few of your reviews and comments, I understand that few of you have found difficult to identify the claim, and some others have said that step 3 is very much tricky. So this second session, or the part 2 on critical reasoning, will throw some more light on how to get these questions right. The most important aspect is you would try to have a clear and better understanding of approaching the arguments. So those who have already received inputs, those who do remember the steps for critical reasoning, you can look at the question. You would start with the argument first, you go to the question, and you would analyze the 4 options. For few, those who have missed part 1 or those who haven't, or those who found it difficult to recollect what happened in part 1, I would start with the steps once again. You have to look at the text. Step 1, is to read the text and identify the claim. The claim is nothing but the central message. The moment we start considering the entire text as argument, you have to focus on 2 cardinal features. The moment you start looking at the text as an argument, of course, that's the first thing. You're given a short text and you have to consider this to be an argument. If you consider the given text to be the author's argument, try to figure out what is the author trying to convey and how he conveys it. Try to get answer for these 2 questions. What is the author trying to convey in the given argument, and how he conveys it? If we could start finding answers for these 2 questions for any text for that matter, not only this has to be done only on critical reasoning, you can try this on any passage in general, any reading text in general. So which means the upper and most specific to reading comprehension and critical reasoning questions. And I don't want to repeat the same ideas which I spoke in part 1. I said there's a logical connection to this question type and reading comprehension, especially the most challenging comprehension would have been limited, or your reading practice in general would have been much limited, or it's just far and few. If you are an occasional reader, certainly you would find these steps very tough. Not only that, if you stay away from the reading practice, be it on reading practice, when I say reading practice, it's not necessarily the reading should happen on these questions. Reading in general can happen on with your storybooks, with your novels, with your blogs, with your articles, with your newspapers, with magazines, but something you should read, you should get exposed to standard English usage. The more you do, the more you read, the better will be your grasping ability to attack questions. And if you analyze the given scenario, it so happens that we all very much skeptical. We are very much uncertain about how the placement scenario is gonna be. Whatever the case is, everyone would understand the placement scenario when for the upcoming placements, the absorption rate would not be as much as it was in the previous years. It could be slightly less. That's what the majority of experts feel so. So if the absorption rate comes down, it will all boil down to the complexity and the most challenging aspects of aptitude tests. So you would be getting much more challenging questions. So keeping those ideas in our mind, we are presenting this session. This strikes me another idea of the previous session, and we ask you to take it from our app. How many of you have gone through the questions? How many of you are able to solve the questions? Do feel free to give your comments so that ratio get the best rounded education. As a result, when my children are ready to attend college, I'll be sure they attend a school with a very small student population. There are just two sentences. For those who struggle to identify the claim, you try to provide a graphical representation of the given text. It says that colleges with high ratio. So that is, if the faculty student ratio is high, it would get the best education. So this is something common which you can easily understand. If the faculty student ratio is high, the quality of education would be much better. Statement 1. Second sentence, as a result, when my children are ready to attend college, I'll be sure they attend a school with a very small student population. So the second sentence comes the author's opinion. He opines that he would send his children to a college where there will be small student population. So these are the two sentences. First thing, the emphasis is here. Any institute or any college with high faculty student ratio can provide the best quality of education. All right. So the text we have understood, that is, we have understood the claim. Step 2. Second step is to understand the question. I do re-emphasize once more, reading the question is different from understanding it. Understanding in the sense, for example, for you to self-check how well you have understood the question. Try to identify or try to note down the key word of the question. If we could get the key word of the question, which means you have understood or you are trying to understand the given question in its given sense. Let's try for this question. Which of the following, if true, identifies the greatest flaw in the reasoning above? So if you go through the question, it won't take much time for you to identify the keyword. The keyword in the given question is the greatest flaw. Now, this is the point where your reasoning ability steps in. Why these words are being framed? First thing, hope you know the meaning for the word flaw. Flaw means weakness. In this case, let's say the error. So look at the way the question has been phrased. It comes with the superlative form, the greatest flaw. So the question itself admits that the given argument is faulty, right? The question itself admits the given argument is faulty, and you have to identify among the four given options that which one exemplifies the greatest flaw in the reasoning above. So this, as I said, has to do with your reasoning ability. First clue with the very question itself, the moment you start identifying the keyword of the question, the way you look at the question would change. First point. And here, luckily, this question carries a clue. Here, the question's keyword flaw or an error comes with a superlative form, the greatest, which means, which is an indication the above argument is faulty. Therefore, give it a second look. Where could be the error? Give it a second look. Give this argument a second look. Having understood that the given argument is faulty from the given question, you need to look back again on the argument and to find out whether you could identify the flaw. Because when it says the greatest flaw, then it means for an average reader, the flaw should strike his eye. You try to check it whether it strikes your eye. Take 30 seconds because we have already done it. Were you able to identify the flaw? Leave out the greatest flaw. At least do you feel that this argument is faulty? You would not be very sure. I'll help you out. When I explained the context, I said the entire text is just 2 sentences. So let's take the first sentence and analyze whether the given first sentence contains an error or not. Time and again, it has been shown that students who attend colleges with high faculty-student ratio get the best rounded education. If you look at these phrases, all these can be considered structural clues. Time and again means this is something which is a fact. The first sentence is very much a fact, and even when you read it, you would admit that the given meaning or the meaning expressed in the first sentence is acceptable. So if you say that the meaning expressed in the first sentence is acceptable, then you can omit this part. Omit this part. It's a clear indication. If at all there is an error, the error must lie in the second sentence. Reread it again. As a result, when my children are ready to attend college, I'll be sure they attend a school with a very small student population. The advantage that you have here is you're not going to provide a descriptive answer. It's not that I helped you to locate where the error could possibly lie, and you're not asked to write an answer on your own. Which of the following, if true, identifies the greatest flaw? You have to gather a clue and jump to the choices. Let's look at these options closer. Any option which helps us to identify the flaw expressed in the sentence can be considered a choice. I'll take you to the answer choices. Let's analyze each choice slowly. Let's take out option A. A very small student population does not by itself ensure a high faculty-student ratio. When you read option A, do you feel that this connects to the logic that the argument talks about? Very much yes. So On the first look, if you're unable to relate this options A's logic to the logic given in the text, you can hold it on for a while because this is very much similar to the content that we discussed. Let's be there. Let option A gets reserved. Option B, importance should be given for the result of childhood environment and not for advanced education. Look at the text once again. We are discussing education in general. Are we discussing different levels of education? Certainly no. Whereas here in option B, it says importance should be given for the result of childhood environment and not for advanced education. We're discussing education in general. If we want me to recollect the claim is if the faculty student ratio is high, the outcome would be best education. So there it hasn't categorized which level of education, be it elementary, primary, or tertiary. So we are very sure when discussing levels of education. That's one clue. Another clue, are we discussing childhood environment? Certainly no. So you have more than one clue to eliminate the second option. Option B gets eliminated. Look at option C. A faculty student ratio is the effect of a well-rounded education, not its source. If you could tie this choice to the claim, perhaps you would keep it, you would desire to keep it for a while. I'll come back again. Look at option D. Parental desires and preferences rarely determine a child's choice of a college or university. Like second option, the fourth option also, we have more than one clues to eliminate this choice pretty much faster. One is the child's choice. There isn't any discussion on the choice of a learner. And another thing, parental desires and preferences. These ideas are out of context, so we can be very sure that option B and option D are certainly wrong choices. Of the four options, first and third relates to the context that we have discussed, of which our duty is to identify which one exemplifies the flaw that the author has made in the argument, because the question says the greatest flaw in the reasoning above, which means that the author has committed a fault. All right. Let's revisit option A and option B again. By now, we eliminated B and D. I explained the reasons. So let's look at these two options closer. Option A says a very small student population does not by itself ensure a high faculty student ratio. This is much closer because that's how the author ends his view. He says that as a result, when my children are ready to attend college, I'll be sure that they attend a school with very small student population. So when he has to look at both the factors of the ratio, high faculty student ratio is high, the education is gonna be much better. That's what the fact is. Whereas this person concludes that he will send his children to a place where the student population is pretty less. So if the student population is less, will it guarantee that there will be more number of faculty? Now it would strike your mind that how or why the question itself says the greatest flaw, because the author hasn't distinguished these two ideas, and the fact is a very small student population will not ensure or does not ensure a high faculty student ratio. Answer is option A, and the first option identifies the greatest flaw in the argument. We have reserved the third option. Let me take you through. Third option says a faculty student ratio is the effect of well-rounded education, not its source. We are not discussing the source. We are just discussing if the ratio is high, the quality of education will be much better, right? So option C nowhere comes to the nowhere comes to the flaw stated and doesn't identify the greatest flaw. When you read option C, you won't think there is any error committed by the author. So therefore, the option A is the right choice for this question. Look at this text. Take 2 minutes time for you to read and identify the claim. Start with step 1. Start looking the text alone, please. Hope you have read the text. Identifying the client may take some time because hope you have read the text. Identifying Identifying the claim for this argument may take some time because this is slightly tricky question for you to ponder deeper, for you to move much closer. You have to connect two different logic for you to arrive at the claim. Let me help you out. If you have read this text by now, you must know what does the word Europa mean. Europa is a place, it says that an ice-covered moon orbiting Jupiter. And you could understand NASA is interested in exploring life on Europa. And recently it has scrapped mission. This is one part. First, you need to know what Europa is. You connect it to the logic, you would understand NASA is interested in exploring it. Okay. I like to take to the first half. It begins from here, it closes here. If life exists elsewhere in the solar system, scientists suspect it would be most likely on Europa, an ice-covered moon orbiting Jupiter. So the first sentence gives us an idea that scientific mission is much more interested in exploring whether life exists in a place called Europa. Second sentence, however, NASA recently scrapped an unmanned science mission to Europe and reassigned most of the employees involved in the project to another project which focuses on landing on astronaut on Mars. So the second sentences say, currently NASA has shifted its attention on Mars and discarded Europa. This is the second sentence. Initially it says, they were interested in Europa and exploring whether life could exist there. And now the second sentence says that it has shifted its attention to Mars. This is the first part of the argument. Look at the second part. The second part begins here and closes the last word. Polls show that Americans are far more fascinated by space travel than are by discovering life elsewhere in the universe. So the first part of the argument discusses NASA. The second part of the argument talks about the opinion, the general opinion of the common people. Polls show that Americans are far more fascinated by space travel than are by discovering life elsewhere in the universe. So it's an opinion poll which says that people are very much interested in space travel rather than to know whether life exists elsewhere or not. The last sentence says, critics argue that NASA's decision-making process places a greater emphasis on public interest than it does on the importance of scientific research. So the last sentence says, NASA is acting or is responding to the opinion of the people. If you read the last sentence again, you will understand critics argue that NASA's decision-making process places a greater emphasis on what? On public interest. So instead of focusing on scientific missions, critics argue that NASA is very much slanting towards dancing to the opinion of the people. This is what the argument is all about. So while you read the text, you could easily understand it has two different segments. One, it talks about NASA and NASA's mission. It says earlier NASA was interested in exploring Europa, and now it is working on Mars. And another segment, the very argument itself consists the second part, which says that the opinion poll is very much, the opinion poll states that general or common people are more interested in space travel. And few critics connect the opinion of the people to the NASA's decision in shifting their mission from Europa to Mars. All these are hidden, and it is your reading ability, not only reading ability, your ability to think logically would help you to connect these pieces together, right? So I believe you understood the argument much better. Now read the question, please. When I ask to read and understand the question, the emphasis is more on you identifying the keyword in the question. Try to do it. Read the question now. This part is a claim. Let's look at the question. Which of the following, if true, would most strengthen NASA's contention that its critics are misinformed? So, this sentence or this question has been twisted. Which of the following, would, if true, would most strengthen NASA's contention? Which means what? You have been asked to identify a choice which would strengthen the reason behind the NASA's shift from Europa to Mars. Not you are not asked to strengthen the opinion of the critics. Okay, so it's slightly twisted. Most strengthen NASA's contention that its critics are misinformed, which means the question itself says the critic's opinion is false. Thereby, you have to identify a choice from the options which should justify why NASA, instead of exploring Europa, went on to explore Mars. Of the 4 options, you should find out a choice to justify the NASA's decision change. Let's try with each option now. Look at option A. Option A says in 2007, NASA spent 30% of its total budget on developing a space shuttle that can travel to Mars. In 2013, that figure is expected to drop to 0%. Does option A anywhere relates to the logic that you're discussing? Try to think it for a while. Are there any clue words in option A for you to easily figure out that option A is a misfit here? Of course, yes, there are clues. NASA spent 30% of its total budget. Is there any discussion to the NASA's budget here, or its budget allocation, or how NASA spends on its allocated funds? Certainly no, that is not the subject of discussion. So as you keep analyzing the choices, the end result would be you can much quickly eliminate options. I would say option A is irrelevant. I explained how to identify relevant choices in part 1. So if need be, you can give it a second look on part 1 video. Look at option B. Studies have shown that Congress traditionally determines NASA's budget by assessing public interest in NASA's projects. If you remember what we did for option A, within 3 seconds, we would eliminate option B too. So I'm taking you to the other part of the examination demands, guys. Not only helping you to answer questions rightly, but I'm also giving you tips to shorten the time consumption. A gets eliminated, B has been eliminated. Look at option C. Option C says some scientists are convinced that a mission to Europa would add immeasurably to our understanding of the universe. Others believe that we will gain little insight from exploring Europa. Please look at C once again, because it throws an element of confusion here. Some scientists are convinced that a mission to Europa would add immeasurably to our understanding of the universe. Others believe that we will gain little insight. So C is very much related to the belief of the scientists, whereas your question asks to identify an option that should support the NASA's contention. From this, we can understand C doesn't provide doesn't provide a reason why NASA shifted its attention from Europa to Mars. So C also gets eliminated. You would have understood D is the answer, but let's verify it once again. Let's validate it whether option D provides a reason for NASA's change from Europa to Mars. A new telescope that has been developed in Tokyo allows scientists to look at Europa in ways never possible before and promises to yield more information than the planned mission was designed to provide. So this provides a far convincing reason for NASA's shift from Europa to Mars. It says that a new telescope provide a much detailed information rather than a planned mission. Therefore, we can be very sure option D is the answer for the given question. The next question, if you have completely understood, and by now I feel that certainly you would have picked up some thread in trying to identify the claim of the argument. If that happens, for question number 6, you should not take more than 60 seconds to identify the claim here. Your time starts now, 60 seconds for you guys. We're able to get the claim of the argument now. It's 2 sentences. A company is considering changing its policy concerning daily working hours. Currently, this company requires all employees to arrive at 8 a.m. The proposed policy would permit each employee to decide when to arrive from as early as 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. Okay. Pretty much easier to understand. The text is much simple. What does it say? A company is considering changing its policy concerning daily working hours. So to put it in a nutshell, the claim of the argument is a company is planning a sort of flexi schedule. Earlier, or the existing system is, it wants or it requires all of its employees to report at 8 a.m. That's a current requirement. The current requirement is it requires all employees to report at 8 a.m. The proposal is, which I said, a sort of flexi schedule, which would allow or permit an employee to report anytime between 6 and 11. So if we want to put it in short words, let me roughly summarize the claim as a flexi schedule. A company where the existing practice is the reporting time for all employees is 8 a.m. is considering a change in a proposal in its reporting time, allowing, or the proposal allows any of its employees to report any time between 6 and 11. So it's quite simple. Let's go to the question. The adoption of this policy will be most likely to affect which of the employee job functions. So the question almost summarizes the claim presented in the argument. The adoption of this policy, which policy? The policy of allowing the employees to report anytime between 6 and 11. The adoption of this policy would be most likely to affect which are the functions. So the key word is this. You need to identify which job function would be mostly affected. So with the question itself, we can understand all the 4 following options or job functions. Among the 4 job functions, you need to identify the job function that would be mostly affected if an employee reports anytime between 6 and 11. I like to give you 30 seconds time for you to eliminate at least a few options. Thirty seconds is itself a pretty much long time for you to arrive at the answer. Let me try. Let me help you out. First, option A, work sans interruption from other employees. Many would have been struck by this word. If you do not know the meaning for this word, sans, hold it for a while, then you cannot eliminate. When I discussed the elimination rules, I did say that elimination will always happen on a reason. When you do not know any choice, or when you do not find a meaning for any particular word given in answer choices, or if you struggle to identify a logic to eliminate, for any of these cases, the option will remain. I repeat, elimination will be based on reason, and if you're stuck on a particular choice on any of the reasons, being it unable to understand it or being able to derive the logic out of it, if you struggle, it doesn't mean that particular given choice is wrong. So in such cases, you will always reserve the option and move on to the other one. Option B, consult at least once a day with employees from other companies. Here, the phrase other companies is a temptation. Just by looking at this phrase, many of you would have chosen option B as the answer. There are chances. But actually, option B is a wrong choice. The reason is consult at least once a day. The requirement of this job function is to consult once. And that can happen even if an employee report anytime between 6 and 11, because the requirement is just to meet once. So B is not the job function that would be mostly affected. B gets eliminated. Option C, submit their work for a supervisor's eventual approval. This is pretty much an easy option to eliminate. I believe everyone would have eliminated because there are 2 clues. One is submit. Submission can happen only after the execution of ARC. So submission has nothing to do with reporting. Whenever an employee reports, he has to report, carry out the task. If the word submit occurs, it means he has completed his task. So only after the execution he would submit. So that's the first clue. For supervised eventual approval. So this will not be the function that will be seriously or be mostly affected. Eliminate C as well. You have reserved option A and option D. Option A, sans means, the word sans means without. Now read option A, work without interruption from other employees. Here the keyword is interruption. The word interruption, when we use the word interruption, it always means a disturbance, right? So work without interruption means always the work would be more productive. Therefore, this is not the function that will be mostly affected. Answer is option D, because it says interact frequently with each other throughout the entire workday. So this will be the function that will be most affected, because let's say a particular team consists of 10 team members, and if the team lead wants to interact with his team members quite frequently, because that's what option says, quite frequently throughout the entire workday, and what will the team leader do if each of its team member report any time between 6 and 11? One reports at 6:30, another reports at 7, yet another reports at 11. He can interact, but can he interact frequently? Certainly not. So answer is option D. Hope you are able to understand the logic behind each of these options, which itself means the very purpose of this question type is to make you think on different dimensions. You should develop a perspective of your thinking ability while you're on these tasks, and that's why I said that working on these questions, practicing more critical reasoning questions will develop your programming skills. So whoever wants to emerge as an excellent programmer, who wants to develop excellent programming skills, do work out these questions, please. And you can have a look at the worksheet also. Look at the next question. I'll give you 1 minute time for you to read and understand the text. Take 1 minute time to read and understand the text and try to get me the claim. You must have gone through the text. Identifying the claim for this argument wouldn't be difficult. Let's try. The claim of the argument is, try to put it in a single sentence, in a couple of words. It says that the imposition of quotas limiting imported steel will not help the big Indian steel mills. In fact, the quotas will help mini mills flourish in the country. Those small domestic mills will take more business from the big Indian steel mills than would have been taken by the foreign steel mills in the absence of quotas. Guys, please note, this text is an excellent question to check your reading ability. If you could read, understand, and identify the claim for this argument, you can say for yourself that your reading ability is really top-notch. If you're not, then that's again an indication. So it's very much a learning curve. Go start, read a lot. Please do read a lot. Keep reading more and then come back to these questions if you have struggled to identify the claim. There are 3 sentences. The first sentence says, talks about imposition of quotas. Second sentence says the impact of quotas. So it says that quotas will benefit small mills. Those domestic mills will take more business from the big Indian steel mills than would have been taken by the foreign steel mills in the absence of quotas. So the third sentence also connects to this idea. In the absence of the quotas, what would have happened? Now the quotas have been imposed, so what would happen? So it says those small domestic mills will take more business from the big Indian ones. How do you understand this phrase, will take more business? Lies your entire ability to comprehend a text. Will take more business from big Indian steel mills means what? It means small mills would compete with big ones. That's what the author says. In the imposition of quotas, and the quotas is gonna benefit the small mills, thereby these small domestic mills will compete with big ones. Then look at the second part. Then would have been taken by the foreign steel mills in the absence of quotas. So if the absence of the quotas, the big Indian steel mills were competing with foreign steel mills. With the imposition of quota, the compared to the foreign steel mills, big Indian steel mills will face competition from the smaller ones. That is the claim. I believe at least to this extent, the first two sentences you would have understood. The third sentences, though you would have read, you would have found it difficult to connect the logic of the third sentence to the entire thing and thereby the claim. If that is the case, do express your doubts, your difficulties in your comments box, or we have those features in our mobile app. We have discussion forum, we have live chat. We want you to respond so that we want you to help you to overcome these difficulties. We don't want to stop with these are the challenging questions, these are the challenges that you face, that everyone does. We are not interested in that. We feel that we like to give you quality inputs. One, second thing, through these quality inputs, you should benefit. Our intention is you should improve, and we can help you to improve only when you say where you have the troubles. Coming back, we identify the claim. Now look at the question. Which of the following, if true, would cast the most serious doubt on the claim made? We have identified the claim. The claim of this argument is small mills will compete with or will take more business from big ones. Your question says, which is the keyword in the question? The keyword is this. You need to identify an option that would cast the most serious doubt. Make sure whether you have understood the question. This is where the step 2's importance pitches in. I did mention reading the question is different from understanding it. You would have read, it says that the question asks you to identify a choice that would cast the most serious doubt. Cast doubt means what? What should your right choice do? In real examination scenario, if you come across these sort of questions, and if you get stuck in getting the meaning for the question itself, you can better avoid the question. Please don't venture into it. That is a usual warning given, but Aptitude Busters recommendation is slightly different. Have this idea, okay, and try to figure out and try to move on to the analysis. And if your analysis is very, very strong, you would get the answer. So let me try without giving you the meaning so that you would know that how Aptitude Buster is far, far superior in taking you to the right choice. The question says, which of the following, if true, would cast the most doubt on the claim made? And somehow or other, we are unable to make the meaning of the question. So let's try analysis. Let's try to figure out, is there anything, any irrelevant choice? Because you do know what does an irrelevant choice mean. Let's go with option A. Quality rather than price is a major factor in determining the type of steel to be used for a particular application. While you read A, you would have very quickly understood that option A is an irrelevant choice. For the reason, we are not discussing the quality of steel being produced. Are we? Go back to the claim. The claim says small mills will compete with the big mills. Nowhere the quality of its products have been talked about. Okay, so if there isn't any discussion on the quality of products being talked about, then certainly option A is an irrelevant choice. A gets eliminated. Option B. Foreign steel mills have long produced grades of steel comparable in quality. Look here, guys. Option B also talks about quality of steel. And by now, we would have eliminated it. Cool. B gets eliminated. Look at option C. Domestic mini mills produce low volume, specialized types of steel that are not produced by the big Indian steel mills. C doesn't talk about quality, so we don't have any clue. Let's keep it for a while. Look at option D. Domestic mini mills consistently produce better grades of steel than do big Indian steel mills. Better grades of steel means what? Better quality. That is one. So better grades also can relate to the quality of steel. If you look at that logic, D gets eliminated. This is one point, but I don't want you to blindfold you without giving you the meaning for the question. Here the question would cause the most serious doubt means the question asks you to weaken the claim. Meaning you need to disprove the claim made by the author. The claim made by the author is due to quota, small mills will compete with Indian big steel mills. Okay, so you need to disprove the author's logic is wrong. Option C says domestic mini mills produce low volume, specialized type of steels that are not produced. So which means the production or the product made by small mills are quite different from big ones, are not produced by big steel mills, suggests the product made by the small ones and the product made by the big ones are different. When the entire product is totally different, we can't say one competes with the other. Therefore, option C can be considered the choice that cast most doubt on the claim. Look at option D. Domestic mini mills consistently produce better grades of steel than do big Indian steel mills. If D is true, then actually option D strengthens or supports the claim made by the author. If domestic mills produce better grades, then obviously big mills will face severe competition from small ones. So D supports, C opposes. Your question asks you to identify the claim that would weaken it. Therefore, the right choice for this question is option C. Thank you for watching. I expect you to give your comments and more particularly on the difficulties that you face in these questions. I like you to give you a reminder. We already shared the worksheet on the critical reasoning. You can find these questions in a mobile app. You can please download our mobile app. Those who already done it, well and good. Those who haven't, the name of our mobile app is Aptitude Buster. You can download it from Play Store. As you download the app, in the home screen itself, there will be a tab on worksheet. Click it to take it to verbal worksheet. Click it, you'll find worksheet on critical reasoning. Download the worksheet or you can just view it. Try to answer a few questions. If you have any doubts, if you have any difficulties in following these steps, one, and as well as in getting your answers right, you're most welcome to share it, because the very app itself provides another features called discussion forum, wherein you can share your doubts, or you can check your answers with your peers. And there is another feature called live chat in the app. You click it, you post any of your query in live chat. We'll be very much pleased to help you in helping you to improve your overall performance on aptitude, and more particularly on critical reasoning questions. Thank you once again.